Hello, hello, hello. What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to Citizen Pete Live. Uh, we're still going with this live thing. Last week it worked out pretty well. Some things to work on here and there, but everything looked good, sounded good. So, we're back and we're trying it again. I'm still trying to figure out a good time of when to actually go live. There's lots of different opinions on when's the best time for folks, and honestly I got a real busy schedule. I got a lot going on, but I'm gonna try to shoot for Monday, Wednesday, and maybe Friday nights. We'll see. I think that could be a good schedule. Thinking around maybe 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, maybe 7 o'clock, somewhere in there. I'm still figuring that part out. But yeah, we're back and better than ever. And tonight, for tonight's live show, I will be drinking a very fine rum and Coke. It's my favorite drink. It is my personal drink of choice. So if you see this throughout today's episode, cheers to you. We've definitely got a lot to talk about today. It's been a very, very interesting time in the news there. And the first thing to talk about is something that, there's a story over the weekend that came out of the New York Times, and I was hoping that would help explain this. This is then candidate Trump becoming President-elect Trump back in the 2016 election. That is when he found out that he is going to become the 45th president of the United States. This is his reaction right here. Doesn't really seem very enthused. Doesn't really seem super jazzed about it. I don't think I don't think it's like a weird partisan thing to say. He doesn't really look that happy. You look at Pence there. Pence looks pretty jazzed. Ivanka looks like she's gonna cry. Don Jr. Don Jr. looks like he just became president. He is super psyched up. But when you look at Donald there, he doesn't seem super happy about it. And there's video of this too. Let's check this out. Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, see, he just doesn't seem very jazzed. He doesn't seem super excited about it. He seems like, I don't know. He doesn't seem that excited. And it's not just him. You look around for the rest of the family. Melania reportedly was in tears on election night. That's according to according to an article from Axios. And yeah, you could see her and Barron Trump to stage right, and she doesn't look super jazzed there. Does not seem very excited at all. I mean, your husband just became the most powerful person in the world, and you look like you cannot wait to get the hell out of there. And so, after this, you kind of wonder why, right? I mean, there's, a lot of speculation that he didn't actually think he was going to become president. And looking at those reactions, that seems pretty reasonable. And from all this reporting we've heard inside the campaign, it didn't seem like he was going to become president. And I totally believe. I mean, you look at all the polls, everything before that, it wasn't looking so good for him. And I think stuff like this is exactly why he was worried about becoming the 45th president of the United States. A New York Times article has come out over the weekend. Oops. Sorry about that. A New York Times article came out over the weekend alleging that Donald Trump paid $750 in 2016 in his for taxes, and he paid $750 in 2017 again for his tax bill. Now, to go back to that original look, I think Trump might have had that reaction to becoming president because he thought, oh shit. So, here's the thing. He could talk about all the horrible things Clinton did, the Benghazi scandal, the email scandal, and some of those things weren't great. A lot of them were overblown, but in general, he could throw a lot of hate towards Hillary, and that was all fine until he knew people were going to start looking into his finances and what he's done wrong. And I'm sure he realized in that moment, oh shit, this could be a big problem for me. This could be a huge problem for me. Because at the same time, he was apparently not paying federal taxes, even though he could afford to pay Stormy Daniels $130,000 to stay quiet about a sex scandal. He apparently didn't pay any tax. And not only that, according to this article, Donald Trump has not paid any federal income tax in 10 of the last 15 years. For comparison, Kamala Harris has paid, she paid $516,000 in 2017, and Joe Biden paid $3.7 million in 2017. Reportedly, it was a little bit high then because of a book that he came out with around then. And so the New York Times report also revealed Trump's been losing a lot of money. And this kind of jives with other reporting that's out there. CNN did an article where they looked at Trump's finances and looked at what he reportedly lost in 2018. Now, according to them, he lost he earned $435 million in 2018. So nearly $500 million. But somehow he reported a loss of $47 million. And that matches up with what's being reported in CNN. And this has reportedly dropped him 77 rankings on the world's the richest person in the richest people in America list. Excuse me. And so that brings up a couple of different questions, right? And that was all this money that he lost before. That was reported at the end of 2019. This is before the pandemic hit, and would have messed up anything with the real estate and hotel businesses. And the headline here is obviously very, very interesting, right? $750 in taxes. That's crazy. That's more than a lot of people pay in federal income tax. It's more than I pay in federal income tax. But I think the interesting thing here really could be what the article says later. It wasn't the headline, it's within the article. And the interesting thing to me is that if this is true, and Trump has not paid any income tax, and has reported a loss of 10 out of the last 15 years, is Donald Trump about to go broke? Is President Trump about to declare bankruptcy again? Now, reportedly, he is $421 million in debt right now. And he could also owe the IRS $100 million after getting a refund of $72 million in 2010. Now, Trump obviously has some great, assets. He has Mar-a-Lago. He has the tower in New York. He's got a lot of different assets, and that's been allowed him to borrow a lot of money because he could borrow on those assets. And so he's been able to kind of skate through for a long time without maybe having a whole lot of income and not really making a ton of money. And this has a couple problems. How is he a great businessman if he hasn't made money in 10 of the last 15 years? And how does he seem so successful if he hasn't made money in 10 of the last 15 years? But actually, Melania Trump summed this up pretty good herself.
I remember once my father and I were walking down Fifth Avenue, and there was a homeless person sitting right outside of Trump Tower. And I think I was probably maybe 9, 10, something like this. It was around the same time as the divorce. And I remember my father pointing to him and saying, that guy has $8 billion more than me, because he was in such extreme debt at that point, And me thinking, what are you talking about? He was sitting outside of Trump Tower, and I'm looking and I'm going, and I didn't understand.
I'm guessing she understands now. Yeah, Trump can borrow a lot of money because he has a lot of collateral to put up. That works great until someone wants that money. And so, like I said, Trump could be on the hook for around $400 million or so now. And there's two ways to look at the tax part of this, right? There's two options there. Either Donald Trump is lying to the IRS. He's either telling them that he didn't make any money when he actually did make a lot of money and is in the green. Could be true. Or he's not making any money at all. Both of them are pretty bad options for Trump. According to the New York Times, in their article, if he was worth 2.5 billion, like he said, he'd be part of the 0.1% of Americans, right? Now, the average tax bill for those 0.1% of Americans would be $25 million a year, which is kind of criminal that it would be so low. So the idea that he's only paying $750 2 years in a row, he's either lying or he just is not nearly as rich as he claims to be. So, this comes as the Trump brand itself is taking a big hit, right? And what I don't mean is just, Trump as a candidate. That's obviously, he's having some problems there. But what I'm talking about is the Trump brand, right? Now, the Trump brand, and for a long time, all the Trump properties, all that stuff, they've been associated with a lot of money, a lot of ritz, a lot of glamour, all that kind of stuff, right? Well, now if you mention Trump to almost anyone on the face of the earth, it's not associated with a royalty brand at all. It's associated with a crazy guy in the White House, unless you are, 30 or 40% of Americans. And so I can only imagine how much he's very popular now with his supporters, but what if he loses the election, right? What if people stop going to all those Trump properties just to, support the president, and when it's not a big political thing, and he has to go back to relying on people going there because they think it's, it's just for the brand. When's that going to dry up? Because the brand is not associated wealth anymore. It's not, it's associated with chaos. And I think people are going to try to distance themselves as much as possible from Trump. And so Trump might be facing some problems if he doesn't win the 2020 election. Now, for Trump's part, he said this is, of course, fake news. He said, it's all fake. And that was his first defense. He said it was fake. And they said, I can't release my tax returns because he's under an audit. He's been saying that for years. And now his new line of defense is saying that he was entitled to take advantage of various tax loopholes and insisting he was mired in very little debt. Well, according to everyone else, you are in a lot of debt. And the thing is, if you're the president of the United States and you're talking about putting America first, then why would you try to cheat them out of a ton of money, right? I mean, I don't like paying taxes that much. No one really likes paying taxes. But I also like driving on roads and going to airports. I like getting the mail. I like knowing that if something happens to me, I can call the police. I also like knowing that if I'm sick, or I can go to the hospital. And I have nephews and stuff, and I myself went to public education, and it's nice knowing that our kids are being educated. It's also nice knowing I have a lot of family in the military that has since retired from the military, and it's nice knowing that they're keeping our country safe. And as much as taxes suck, all those taxes go, to make sure that we're all okay as a country. It's our way of buying into America. And apparently, Donald Trump feels he's entitled to not do that. So, this all comes just a couple, so as this is all going on, if that wasn't a chaotic enough time in America, Ruth Bader Ginsburg just passed away. About a week or so ago. And it wasn't 30 minutes until after she passed away that Mitch McConnell announced that he will vote in a successor as soon as possible. And this is very different in 2016 when Mitch McConnell refused to hold a vote on Obama's nominee. They did hearings. They had people, they talked to Neil Gorsuch, or I can't remember his name back then, but they had a lot of folks talk to Obama's nominee, but he refused to hold a vote on him, which, there's nothing in the Constitution that's saying that he can't do that. A lot of these things were just political norms, and he just kind of defied that. He decided, hey, I'm not going to vote on the nominee. And really, it's kind of showed a weakness on his part a little bit, because I think he knew that if he did vote, that maybe this nominee was going to be confirmed, even though Republicans controlled the Senate, and that could be a big problem for him. Now, fast forward 4 years later, and he says he will hold a vote on Trump's nominee, Amy Coney Barrett, even though we are about 45 days out from the election. And Obama's nominee was 9 months out from the election. That was too soon back then, but now, when it's Trump's nominee, I guess that changes things. I guess we can do it now. Now, some think that they are trying to confirm Amy before the election to rule on an upcoming battle over the ACA, over Obamacare. Personally, I think they're going to drag this thing out for as long as possible to keep the court in people's minds over the next few weeks. How this kind of works a little bit is that, the Republicans, they want to get rid of the Affordable Care Act for sure, but they also don't want to do it before the election, right? 'Cause if they do it before the election, I mean, the common kind of thinking here is that issues like that will bring voters out. Hey, come vote for us so we can get rid of the ACA. If they do that before the election, maybe less people are going to come out. Now, Trump, for his part, I think he wants to do it before the election so he can, have something to show to voters. Hey, look, I got something done for you. Because over the last 4 years, he really hasn't gotten a whole lot done for them at all, much at all, unless you are a very, very wealthy person and you got a nice little tax cut out of it. And there's been a lot of debate over this. There's been a lot of trying to appeal to Republicans, trying to appeal to their sense of fairness, trying to shame them into not doing this. But the fact of the matter is, they just don't care. They just don't care, right? It's kind of a waste of time. I mean, I get it. Like, we're trying to convince them, and honestly, Democrats, they really don't have a whole lot of power to stop this. But in general, they just don't care. And what we have now is a system where the government is being run by the minority, not the majority. Right? Our democracy isn't about who has the most votes. It's about who has the most votes where. Right? And there's a couple different reasons for this. And a couple things to point out. First of all, the vast majority of Americans actually agree with Democrats on a lot of different issues. Right? Republicans represent a smaller amount of Americans than what Democrats do. And a big reason why they're able to maintain the control they have, there's a couple different reasons. One of the first ones I want to talk about is the Electoral College. And that obviously was a big story when Trump got elected. And, people have been talking about getting rid of it for years. And I just recently found out that even Nixon talked about getting rid of it. And you might feel a lot of different ways about the Electoral College. I mean, obviously that seems like a drastic shift to get rid of something that we've been using for such a long time. But I want you to take a look at this map right here. This is a map of the United States, very well done. And the important thing about this map is this little red spot right here. That's Los Angeles County, right? That is, there are 10 million people living in LA. Now, that 10 million that is living in that in that one county in Los Angeles is more than the population than each of these states here. Bigger population than Oklahoma, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin, Washington, Idaho, Nevada. Each of these states individually has less people living in it than Los Angeles County, right? But those people in Los Angeles County, their votes just don't matter as much as all those other votes in throughout the country. And so this is kind of played out in the last couple presidential elections, where Democrats have won 6 of the last popular votes, but lost the presidency in both 2000 and 2016. Hillary Clinton famously won by 3 million votes. And so Democrats and Democratic voters are losing their voice. Obviously, this just showed up. They've won the popular vote, but they haven't gotten the presidency because of the Electoral College making their votes essentially less valuable and underrepresenting them. The other form of underrepresentation comes in the Senate. Now, if I go back to this map of the United States, and we're looking at, you can clearly see that the states in blue have a little bit less population, right? Well, the thing is, they all have 2 senators, right? We can go back to our old, political knowledge. We can go back to all our old, knowledge of how the Constitution, how things work. Each state gets 2 senators, and that really kind of screws over states with bigger populations. Like, for example, South Dakota has 884,000 people in it, right? And they have the same representation in the Senate as California with 40 million people. I mean, that is a huge, huge discrepancy there. And what it points out to is that we're in a country where it definitely seems like people, if you live in a smaller state, which is typically a red state, then your vote and your opinion is going to go a lot further in the halls of Congress than it will if you live in a Democratic state. Right? The other way that Republicans are able to maintain power through nefarious means is voter suppression, right? You hear all throughout the country of people losing the right to vote for whatever reason, or Republicans fighting to make sure people can't vote. In Kentucky, in this upcoming 2020 presidential election, 600,000 people are going to have to vote in one polling place, right? They're going to have one place to go vote. How is that not voter suppression? I mean, you wouldn't try to pack 600,000 people, into a football game, right? And now they're all supposed to go to one center to vote. And other places are trying to, you could say, hey, well, what if you just go vote early, right? You can avoid the crowds if you just show up early. Well, in Texas, they're trying to sue to stop early voting. They're like, hey, we don't like this early voting thing. We don't like people showing up at the polls early. Let's try to shut that down, which I honestly, and I've been thinking about this all day, I honestly can't think of any rational reason that someone would want to limit early voting. I mean, that just seems ridiculous. Why would you want people to not be able to go to the polls early? And another little story that has not gotten a lot of attention is the Trump campaign's plan to have armed guards at polling places. Something Donald Trump Jr. looks very enthusiastic about. You can see him calling for people to join the army and secure the 2020 election. Here he is with his rifle there. Nice touch with the Hillary on the magazine clip. She's behind the bars. Very, very classy there. Way to win with Grace Don Jr. What a nice guy there. But yeah, they're trying to get armed guards to patrol polling places. That seems like voter suppression to me. That does not seem like maybe I've missed it. Maybe I've missed the Joe Biden thing about, all right, let's get guns and stand in front of polling places, but that seems kind of shitty. And, the reason why the GOP has been doing this is because they've been really, really good about it. They've been really successful at cheating the American people out of their right to vote and trying to, also gerrymander districts. So if you do go out and vote, your vote doesn't mean as much. And they've been very successful about this. And the reason why they've been doing all these tricks is not because they think that the Republican Party is the future of America. I mean, it's quite the opposite. They're doing these tricks because they know that they're in the minority. And Mitch McConnell has made this very, very clear. He knows that the old school Republican Party is dying out. And he knows this for a couple reasons. You don't have to be a genius to figure this out, right? First of all, when you think about your classic Republican voter, what do you picture? Right? Maybe an older person, probably a white person. And that's not where the country is heading, right? I mean, we're a much more diverse culture, right? When you look at young Americans, they tend to vote Democratic. You look at education. Back in the day, in the Ronald Reagan era, the Republicans were very good at winning the educated white vote. Not the case anymore. Not the case anymore. And this has shown up on polling when it comes to, controversial cultural issues, such as abortion. Right now, 77% of people agree with Roe versus Wade. They don't want to see it overturned. Gun rights. I mean, a majority of Americans support expanding some sort of restrictions to ordering a firearm, whether it's just expanded background checks, restrictions on how much ammunition can buy. There's various numbers per thing, but overall, the country supports more gun legislation. Doesn't happen in Congress because Republicans are running Congress. But again, and gay marriage. People by and large support gay marriage now, even if it does not support maintain a level of support in the Republican Party. And so knowing this, Mitch McConnell has spent this entire time focusing on appointing judges to the federal bench with lifetime appointments to make sure conservatism survives. He even blocked Obama's appointments during his term when the courts, because he knew that if he blocks these judges, then he'll be able to pack all the courts, not just the Supreme Court, but pack the courts when a Republican president took over. In fact, he had a nice little laugh about it.
I was shocked that former President Obama left so many vacancies and didn't try to fill those positions.
I'll tell you why. I was in charge of what we did the last 2 years of the Obama administration.
I will give you full credit for that.
Yep, gives him full credit for that. And so now Trump's legacy, really, it's going to be a lot of the chaos, the political divide that now exists in our country. But by and large, his legacy is in the court system. And that's the Supreme Court system and the federal branch. The Senate and President Trump have confirmed more federal judges during his presidency than any other president in the history of the United States. And with Amy, if she is confirmed to the bench, which likely is going to happen, if it doesn't happen before the election, it'll happen afterwards in the lame duck session. Unfortunately, there's not a lot Democrats can do to really stop it. And, for a second there, I thought they might possibly shut down the government over it, but that didn't happen. And so likely we're going to be seeing a 6-3 split on the Supreme Court for the foreseeable future. And that could last for a long, long time. Here is a look, and I'll blow this up full screen for you. Here's a look at the ages of the justices on the Supreme Court. And of course, with Ruth Bader Ginsburg dying just around 10 days ago. And she was the oldest justice on the court. Trump's nominee there, Brett Kavanaugh, he was 55, or is 55, excuse me. Neil Gorsuch is 53. And if Amy Coney Barrett is confirmed, she would actually be the youngest justice by being only 48 years old. So if they do appoint Amy to the Supreme Court, they'll have 5 Supreme Court justices. Republicans will have appointed 5 Supreme Court justices, again, despite losing the popular vote in the last 6 of the last 7 elections. And with the ages of, and it's very, you don't ever want to try to figure out how long people are gonna last for it. That's very taboo. But looking at the ages of the folks on the Supreme Court, it's very likely that the Supreme Court will be conservative for a very, very long time. I mean, we're talking, at least maybe the next 10 years or so. We might see one new justice in that time. Likely looking at some of the ages of these justices, we might not have a new confirmation of the Supreme Court, possibly for the next, maybe even 12, 16 years or something like that. And that means that with the country trending to be more democratic, that the highest court in the land will be at a lockstep with the rest of the country. And this has problems that are far and wide, right? the Republicans, yeah, they've been very good about playing this political game to be able to take control of the country. But if people stop feeling like the government represents them, that's a problem. I mean, that's if people stop feeling like their vote matters, right? If people stop feeling like, that their country reflects who they are, then that's an issue, and that's going to cause a lot of problems in the future. And as we've seen throughout the country, there's a lot of partisan politics. It just seems like the last 4 years have been really chaotic, and that's honestly what I think Trump's biggest problem is. I mean, the coronavirus is huge, but I think a lot of people, they remember a time when politics didn't seem so like such constant chaos. And with this confirmation to the Supreme Court, likely confirmation to the Supreme Court, it looks like we're probably going to be having that chaos for a very, very long time. And now to a different story. A question that is on a lot of Democrats' minds. A lot of liberal-leaning kind of folks are wondering if the Democrats could actually expand the Supreme Court. And actually, Mitch McConnell, it's kind of been funny, but he's been talking about this for years, because that's been his, the Supreme Court and the courts around the country are the biggest thing he's been fighting for. And so he's been trying to figure out, okay, like right now he's winning that game. But obviously, if Democrats get in power and they vote to expand the Supreme Court, that'll undo all of the work he's done. And right now they can't do that because of the filibuster, right? And the filibuster, in case you were unaware, it allows the minority party to stop the majority party from just doing whatever they want, to some extent. And, that's been a thing for a long time. And what they're calling it now is the Armageddon option. And what that is essentially the idea that Democrats could just vote with a simple majority to eliminate the filibuster, which they can do. Mitch McConnell knows this well because he did what was called the nuclear option back in the day, to eliminate the 60-vote threshold that was required for a Supreme Court justice to actually be confirmed to the Supreme Court. And this all sounds great and good. It sounds like a good option for the Democrats, potentially, politically, to try to, get back some seats on the courts that they might have feel were stolen from them, in the form of Obama's nominee not getting appointed to the court, and now right before the election putting another judge. Then they could add more to kind of right this wrong, as they would say. But the question is, do they actually have the votes? And I'm not so sure. I don't know if they are going to be able to actually get the votes necessary to pack the Supreme Court, because a lot of the moderate Democrats have actually been saying they won't expand the Supreme Court. Sorry, there's a lot of ads here. There was something else there before, but yeah, they're essentially saying that, hey, they don't like that idea. And honestly, I don't know how much I like the idea either. Joe Biden doesn't support it. And, the thing is, right, if Democrats do pack the Supreme Court, then what's to stop Republicans from packing the Supreme Court when they come to power? If we were to add, let's say, 3 justices on the court, that would make it would it be like an 11-member court? Then what's the Republicans to stop that from going to like a 15-member court, or it just keeps going on and on and on, right? Now, the only way I could actually see this happen is if the court does something to take down something that Americans really support, like abortion rights, for example, right? Right now, abortion is protected throughout the country through Roe versus Wade, even though it has been under attack from Republicans for years. But right now, that right is fundamentally protected by that ruling. Well, if you really want to protect it, it would take a constitutional amendment. And likely we won't get to 60 votes in the Senate to actually make that happen. So, the only way I could see them actually expanding the court is if abortion rights are taken away, then they might have no other option to do that. No other option to protect abortion. So that's the only time I could actually see them see them doing that. But either way you look at it, this is kind of bad for the country, right? And this is something that, you know, kind of shows that even if Joe Biden wins, he might be in an interesting situation after the election. Because right now, Democrats just want to beat Trump. That's what it's all about. Just beat Trump. And no one's really talked about a whole lot what happens after he wins, right? The progressive part of the party definitely wants to do some things like expand the Supreme Court. They want to, add more states to the union so we can kind of balance out the Senate a bit. Some good ideas, you know, but it's the establishment Democrats are not on board with some of those things. So it kind of shows us some previews of the fights of the future. And so, you know, that could be an interesting kind of thing. But overall, this whole thing, I think for most Americans or most moderate Americans, all it really does, this whole fight back and forth, do we expand, do we not expand, add states, not add states, I think it just erodes people's faith in good government, right? It makes people think that this is all just a political game, and when one side gets what they like or don't like, they can just change the rules, and that's not good. I also think that we need to figure out ways to get more things done in this country, right? We shouldn't be in a situation where one person dies, and even that, you know, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, she was wasn't just one person, she was a great American, but she dies, and now 50% of the country could lose control over their own bodies. I mean, if someone says, "Hey, I don't follow politics, or I don't pay attention to politics because none of it really matters and nothing really changes," and sometimes it's kind of hard to argue with them, right? We should be living in a country where, you know, someone's personal freedom and choosing how they want to live their life is based on whether or not someone else lives and dies. Just doesn't seem sustainable in the long term. Now, looking down, looking at the future here, trying to figure out exactly what's going to go on. Wrong button. So looking at the future here, trying to figure out what's going to happen on the Supreme Court. And, you know, the first thing that Democrats have been talking about a lot is Roe versus Wade, of course. That's the first thing most people think about. And honestly, it's safe. Roe versus Wade is probably not going anywhere, but abortion rights could still be outlawed. So Barrett in the past has said that Roe versus Wade was safe. During a 2013 forum, let me see if I can pull it up for you real quick. Waiting for my computer to load. That's going a little slow. But in a 2013 forum, Amy Barrett said that she aligned the view that Roe will endure in some form. She declared the landmark ruling was a fundamental right, that women has a right to choose an abortion, and that will likely remain. The controversy, she said, right now is about funding. Now, honestly, this is kind of... Now, honestly, this is all bullshit, right? Because right now it's illegal to for the government to fund abortions, right? Like, federal funding for abortions is illegal throughout the country. What is more likely is that we're going to see a lot of ridiculous restrictions on abortion. Just like the challenges to Roe versus Wade that the Supreme Court looked at just a few years ago.
Court threw out a Texas law that required abortion clinics to upgrade their facilities to hospital-like standards and for clinic doctors to have admitting privileges at nearby hospitals. Supporters of the law argued it raised the level of care for women. But the opposition said the law would have closed all but a handful of clinics in Texas. Justice Stephen Breyer, in the majority opinion, wrote, "The Texas law, quote, provides few, if any, health benefits for women, poses a substantial obstacle to women seeking abortions, and constitutes an undue burden on their constitutional right to do so."
So that's the thing. It's that, you know, you don't have to just get rid of Roe versus Wade to stop an abortion. Abortion rights, I should say. Republicans have been trying to do this for years in states throughout the country. Admitting privileges and surgical equipment is one thing, right? And basically the idea there is that for admitting privilege, that a doctor has to be able to practice at a local hospital in the area. And a lot of local hospitals have said absolutely not. Especially you have a lot of hospitals that are run by religious organizations, Presbyterian, stuff like that. And they are not going to allow an abortion doctor to practice there. Also, surgical equipment, right? And this is a twofer, okay? So to say that abortion clinics, which the vast majority of abortions are medical abortions, right? They literally give you a prescription and you go get a pill, okay? But Republicans now want every abortion facility to need surgical equipment. That'll never be used, but what it will do is make it so those facilities have to shut down because they simply can't afford the equipment. Another thing they've been doing, they've actually been successful here in Texas, is a mandatory wait. So it takes 48 hours from your first visit to when you say, hey, I want an abortion, before they'll actually give you the medication to undergo the procedure. And so the thing is, that might not seem like a huge burden, right? That might not seem like that big of a thing. But if abortion clinics are shut down throughout, the state and the country, and your state might only have, I think there were Texas, the entire state of Texas, which is massive, could maybe only have like a handful of abortion clinics, maybe 2 or 3 abortion clinics. Well, then that becomes a lot more difficult, right? That isn't if you're in the city and you just go downtown and you go to your Planned Parenthood or something like that, and then you come back in 2 days. No, that means that you need to leave the city you're in, you need to go to your appointment, and you potentially have to just wait around 48 hours or go back home and then come back before you can actually get the medication you need for an abortion. And, you probably have to see the doctor after the procedure, and so that just adds more expense to people. It makes it harder for people to get abortions. Another thing they've been trying to do is a 6 to 8 week cutoff. And the idea here is, the idea that you can detect a heartbeat, as early as, 6 to 8 weeks. Now, the problem with this is that most women don't know if they're pregnant before 6 or 8 weeks, right? Most women, if they take birth control's not perfect. And, they might have, a lot of women have a period in that first trimester right after they're pregnant. So theoretically, women would, I guess, have to take pregnancy tests every 2 weeks to make sure that they're not pregnant. But that's a huge deterrent, right? Because after 8 weeks, you might say, hey, I didn't know I was pregnant before, but if the Republicans have their way, you will not be able to get an abortion. Now, these rules right here, they would shut down the vast majority of abortion clinics around the country. But, let's be honest here. This isn't about reducing abortions. It's about punishing women for having sex. If you really wanted to stop abortions throughout the country, if you really wanted to reduce abortions, you'd offer free contraception. Doesn't happen now. You would revamp sex education. I was surprised to learn that abstinence only is still a very, very popular form of sex education throughout the country. Here in Texas, where I live, the vast majority of cities, the last majority of counties and school districts still teach abstinence only, which is like you're not teaching them anything. It would be like trying to teach kids, hey, how do you put out a fire, right? Without telling them what causes a fire. It just makes no sense. Also, if you didn't want abortions to happen, you'd be more willing to support financial support for young families, right? How can the state require, women to have these children and then say, okay, have fun with that, right? Kids, they kind of need to eat a couple times a day, so I hear. It kind of makes it a little bit difficult to work if you have a young one you have to take care of. There's not a whole lot of early childhood places. It's not a whole lot of care for young children. They got to wait a couple years before they can actually go to school. So what are you going to do in the meantime, right? And what we're, as a government, the society, you can't require people to have kids and then not help them out financially with those kids at all. And so again, this debate is not about abortion. It's not about stopping, it's not about stopping abortion. It's about controlling sex in our society, right? Now, there's tons of different forms of contraceptions, right? There's the pill you could take, there's the shot, all those kind of things, but they all have some kind of failure rate. The only thing that's 100% safe is 100% sure to make sure you don't have a child and make sure you're not pregnant is an abortion. And for a lot of these folks that are against Roe vs. Wade and against abortion, it's not about the kids. Again, it's about what they say is they want to stop irresponsible people, which is another way of saying they want to make sure there is always a risk for engaging in sex. They want to make sure that there is always a chance that you'll get pregnant and there's nothing you can do about that, right? They want to make sure that there's always a consequence to promiscuity, and that's really what that's all about. And for me, it's ironic that the party that is all about freedom and personal liberties and doesn't want to wear a mask because that impedes on their personal liberty, now wants to take the most important choice in many young people's lives away from them. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So, this next story is, this is not a new story. This is kind of something that's been going on for a long time. And that is what happened to Breonna Taylor. And honestly, even though this happened months ago, we're still figuring out the facts of what actually happened. And it's a question of if we'll ever know the facts of whatever actually happened. So, the basics of this, in case you haven't heard, is that Breonna Taylor's ex-boyfriend listed her address and on forms and stuff, and so the police officers thought that was his official address, right? And so they were trying to find this guy. They're trying to arrest him because he was a drug dealer. And so what they did was they got a no-knock warrant, right? And that is what it sounds like. That's when police officers think, hey, this could be a dangerous situation. We don't want to announce ourselves, so we're just going to get a battering ram and we're gonna break the door down, right? And so that's what happened in this case. Except, the guy they were looking for wasn't there. Who was there was Breonna Taylor and her then boyfriend. And so what happened is they did not announce themselves. At least that's what you would be implied with a no-knock warrant. And they broke the door down. And Breonna Taylor and her boyfriend, who were in bed watching TV, heard someone break the door down. And so they went to investigate, and the boyfriend grabbed a gun. Now, what happened next is unclear. Now, the police, for their part, they did say that they did announce themselves, but that's just, that's, who knows if that's true or not. What we do know what happened is that Breonna's boyfriend fired a single shot, right? A single shot when someone broke into his home, and he didn't know who they were, and so he fired a shot at them because, understandably, very scared then. The police officers then returned fire. They reportedly fired 20 shots, and one of those shots hit Breonna Taylor, who was unarmed, and she died at the scene. And now, one of the officers who shot her has been charged, but not for killing her. Nope. They were charged for shooting the neighbor's house. Right? They were charged for, their bullet, shooting up the neighbor's home. Not for killing the human being. Now, legal experts say officers can't be charged because of self-defense. And that is kind of understandable. They feared for their life, and that's why they shot. And so now, no one's going to be held responsible. Right? Even though the police officers obviously seem negligent here, And even if you think, hey, if you think, one thing to point out here, if you think, oh, this guy fired at the police and, he got what he was, he got what he was asking for, who shoots at the police? Keep in mind that he only fired one shot, right? One shot. Now I've never been arrested in my life. Definitely not a criminal mastermind. But if I'm going to engage with a shootout with the police, right? If I know police are coming in, if I hear police are coming in, I'm probably going to fire more than one shot. I mean, I'm not the expert in this, but, typically it seems like one shot is not, it's not standard in a shootout. It seems like you fire a lot of shots. And so it seems to me very reasonable that he did not know it was the police that were there, which would basically mean that the police did not announce themselves. But again, because they fear for their lives, no one is going to be held responsible. The city paid $12 million to Breonna's family, but let's be honest, that's just blood money. It's not justice. It's paying for Breonna's family to go away. And specifically in the settlement there, the city made sure that they didn't have to admit they made a mistake, that the police department didn't have to admit that they made a mistake. So for months and months, there have been protests about police brutality, right, throughout the country. There have been, and a lot of these protests, some of these protests have gone violent. There's been reports of looting, even though that's not associated with the protests. There's been, a lot of chaos and a lot of folks in the streets demanding, justice for unarmed black people that are being murdered. And this charge kind of sums up what they're fighting for perfectly, right? No one is going to face charges in Breonna Taylor's death. She essentially just died, and no one is going to face any consequences for that. But when it comes to shooting the neighbor's house, someone's got to pay. Someone has to pay for that shit. Someone is going to jail or prison for shooting the neighbor's house. And that's played out with these protests across the country. People are like, hey, I don't like unarmed black people getting killed. But then those protesters went and attacked that target. Or they attacked that business. And now, I'm not so sure if I support this. Because what they're saying is that business, that target, is more important than unarmed black people being killed. And that's pretty shitty. Now, this might be a bit of a stretch, but if you ask me, dogs in this country get more justice than black Americans. Just ask Michael Vick.
But we have more tests.
Court threw out a Texas law that required abortion clinics to upgrade their facilities to hospital-like standards, and for clinic doctors.
Wrong button, we're still learning. This is just live. But yeah, if you ask me, black Americans get less justice in this country than dogs. And you can just look at the case with Michael Vick. In case you forgot, Vick was the former Falcons quarterback, my favorite team, was arrested for dogfighting. And, this was a huge story back in the day. I mean, everyone remembers what happened to Michael Vick, right? And honestly, a side note, that what happened to the dogs was actually worked out pretty good after they were rescued. See, before that time, this is kind of like a small story about this, but before that time, when dogs were, taken from dogfighting rings, they were just put down because people thought, okay, like, these dogs are unsalvageable, essentially, which is a really shitty thing. And because there's so much publicity around this case, they now actually, they decide, okay, we can't just put these dogs down. Let's rehabilitate them. And now when dogs are found in some of these horrible, horrible situations, and what Mike Vick did was horrible. Don't get me wrong there. But there is some good that has come out of it. And that now these dogs are rehabilitated instead of put down. And Vic himself lost his fortune and spent months in federal prison for this crime. And had to give up, tons of money for fines. I think he spent thousands and thousands of dollars just for the dog rehabilitation, which again was a good thing. But the Falcons, his former team, I think at one point sued him for $26 million. So by the end of it all, Vic was broke. And not only did he lose his fortune, but he paid his debt to society by serving in prison for 23 months. But even to this day, he is vilified. People hate Michael Vick. A couple months ago, there was a petition about, before the pandemic when these things seemed to matter, Vic was going to be a captain at the Pro Bowl, which just sparked a firestorm. People were very pissed that Michael Vick was going to be a captain at the Pro Bowl. And so it shows that, even after he's lost his fortune, paid his debts to society, people will never look at Michael Vick and think he's nothing but a dog killer. But Breonna Taylor's killers, they can go on. They can still be officers. They haven't been charged. A lot of them haven't been charged with a crime. They can go. Some of them are still working for that same department. They can leave and they can move and they can find other jobs and pretend like this never happened. They can just move on. And so to recap, a dog killer, former NFL quarterback, gets 23 months in prison. Cop shoots and kills Breonna Taylor, and nothing happens. Not a damn thing. Now, the last hope for justice in this case is that the FBI is looking into it. They're looking into, and maybe they could charge the officers with something there. But honestly, cases like this, they just kind of erode a lot of people's faith in the criminal justice system, in law enforcement, including me. I definitely thought that there would maybe be some justice in this case. But unfortunately, it seems that it's too common that people don't get justice. So our last story for the night is a look at the presidential debate tomorrow night on Fox News. And Donald Trump is set to debate Joe Biden, with the moderator being Chris Wallace. Now, obviously, this is very important for both candidates, and because debates can have a huge impact, right? Debates can be a huge part of the election. Just ask Michael Bloomberg.
Court threw out a Texas law that required abortion clinics to upgrade their facilities to hospital-like standards, and for clinic.
Sorry, we don't have that clip. But yeah, just ask, Michael Bloomberg, right? Bloomberg went from a leading candidate in the primaries. He was, a lot of people thought he would give Joe Biden a run for his money. And then after $1 billion spent on his campaign, he only won American Samoa. Which, man, that's just not a really good return on investment right there. And I was kind of shocked when I first saw this. And I will actually, if I can for a second, I will pull up the article for you. Because yeah, I mean, that's just $1 billion and you only win one state. Yep. That's a lot of money down the drain there. But the reason why I bring this up isn't just to make fun of Mike Bloomberg. It's a cautionary tale for Biden, right? So right now Biden is well funded and he is just crushing Trump in fundraising. He's leading in polls all across the country. But this shows you that after a bad debate performance, some of that can all come crashing down. And Joe Biden is in a kind of precarious situation with this debate because his goal is to not lose, which can sometimes be hard to do, especially when your opponent has an interesting relationship with the facts. Now, honestly, I think Joe Biden will be fine. And people forget, he's a good debater, right? He stood his own against Sarah Palin when she was very popular. And that was kind of a hard thing back then because people were like, well, how are you going to attack Sarah Palin without, seeming sexist? Because she was a huge rising star, and a lot of people looked up to Sarah Palin until the wheels fell off. and Joe Biden debated her before the wheels fell off. And so it's like, okay, how do you go after Sarah Palin? But he was able to do that successfully, and a lot of people think he won that debate. More recently, he went toe-to-toe with Paul Ryan, who, again, was way more popular than good old Joe. And Joe wiped the floor with Paul Ryan. I mean, looking back on some of that debate, it's just like, man, he, Paul Ryan did not do so good there. Now, Joe Biden, honestly, he didn't look so good in the primaries when it was a ton of candidates on the stage. But when it was just him and Bernie Sanders, he did just fine. And so, for a lot of the Trump team, a lot of Trump supporters, they think, they hear Sleepy Joe, they hear all this stuff about Joe Biden. And I think they think that Joe Biden is he's just gonna fall. He's just gonna fall apart in the debate. And I just, I don't see where people think that's gonna happen. If anything, this plays against Trump, because he's painted Joe Biden for his supporters as such a moron, right? Such a low energy, imbecile. And so if Joe Biden actually walks on the stage and doesn't trip and fall or something, okay, that's not. And if he actually looks competent, that doesn't look good. And so this brings us to the current president of the United States, and what's at stake in the debate for him. Now, there's still time on the clock for the 2020 election, but it ain't looking good. Trump is losing in most national polls by 10% or 10 points. And you look at the battleground states, and the math just isn't there. He's losing in many of the battleground states. I mean, he's made up some ground in Florida, I believe, but in general, it looks like if the election were held today, Donald Trump would win, or would lose. Donald Trump would lose the 2020 election. And so Trump needs a win in this debate, and he knows it, right? Trump, actually, it has been widely reported, wanted to add a fourth debate with Biden in early September, right? He wanted to do another debate with Joe Biden in addition to the three they're already having. And there's a couple things about this, right? If Trump thought that he was in such a good spot, then why would he want the other debate? If he thought, okay, hey, I am gonna destroy Joe Biden as he's been saying, why would he want another debate on the calendar? Unless he realized he's got some ground to move up. Also, speaking of the ground, Trump isn't exactly going to be on his own turf here, right? I mean, people have been talking about the need to live fact check him so he just won't make shit up. And Chris Wallace has shown that he is more than willing to do that.
But we have more tests by far than any country in the world.
But, sir, testing is up 37%.
Well, that's good.
I understand. Cases are up 194%. It isn't just that testing has gone up, it's that the virus has spread. The positivity rate has increased. The virus is worse than it was.
Many of those cases are young people that would heal in a day. They have the sniffles, and we put it down as a test.
The sniffles. Well, again, that clip just drives me crazy, right? I mean, obviously it's not, okay, yes, young people do better with the coronavirus than older people, but if you're spreading it, if those young people are spreading it, that's a problem. That's not good. But anyway, so Trump just saying his random bullshit like he normally does might not fly, even though this is on Fox News, because Chris Wallace is there. And, I've watched Chris Wallace for a long time. I have not always been a fan, but he's definitely not been one to put up with Trump's bullshit. And so the thing Trump maybe has going for him is that similar to Biden, is that a lot of people think he's an idiot or a moron. But sometimes, when he's in front of a mainstream news audience, he knows how to come off to be, a little bit more intelligent than he normally kind of seems, right? Like I watched his town hall recently, and he definitely had some issues there. He definitely had some problems, but by and large, I think people were watching thinking Trump was just going to, talk about injecting himself with disinfectant, and that's not what happened. And so I think for Trump's maybe thing here is if he can seem somewhat intelligent to people, maybe that's a possible win for him. I think he's going to appeal to folks who think, oh, maybe the mainstream news does say bad things about Trump. Maybe they're not being fully accurate. Trump has a possibility to maybe convince some of those people. And, trust me, it is not lost on me that looking at this debate and you're kind of looking at both candidates and you have to include, okay, who's not going to seem the dumbest? Right? Like, okay, is Joe Biden going to look dumb? Is Trump going to look dumb? Is Trump going to look smart? Is Joe Biden going to look smart? Like, that just seems to be a very bad place for where we are in deciding the next president of the United States. Right? I mean, we are, 330 million strong. Like, we claim to be, the best country in the history of the world. And now we're watching the debate for the leader of our country, and we're just trying to figure out, can the current president not say anything stupid for an hour and a half? And is Joe Biden going to say black people, aren't black if they don't vote for him again? That's not a great place to be. So my prediction for the whole thing, what do I think is going to happen? Well, I think Trump is going to come out strong. I think he's going to come out swinging hard because he knows he's got to win this thing, and he's going to attack Biden's family, namely Hunter Biden. Republicans have quietly been working in the Senate to try to dig up dirt on Hunter Biden and trying to allege, all kinds of crazy shit about him, stuff that I'm not going to repeat out on here. And that works in Republican circles, but honestly, I question attacking a guy's family after he buried his wife and his daughter, and then, about a decade or so later, buried his son. So he's buried several members of his family. And attacking his family, with that in mind, I don't think that's going to fly with a lot of mainstream America. I don't think people are going to react to that very well. And ultimately, this debate I think is going to be interesting. I think it'll be good to watch. I'm very excited to check it out. But I don't think it's going to move a whole lot of voters, right? Because the 2020 election is ultimately going to be about who voters feel, or what voters feel about the coronavirus, right? How they feel, and Trump's in a bad position here because he has been president when the coronavirus is happening. He's trying to blame Biden for things as if Biden was president. I saw a line of attack that Republicans are saying, has anyone looked at Biden's response to the crisis? And I'm like, what response? He's a private citizen. He can't do anything. He's worn a mask. He's been very good about mask wearing, so I'd say his response has been pretty good. But Trump, being in charge of this catastrophe that is the coronavirus and the American response to the coronavirus, that's not a good position to be in to ask voters, hey, how am I doing so far, right? And so Trump needs to change the perception of him and the coronavirus response. It has not been going well. People are starting to do back things. The economy is slowly starting to tick, but by and large, people are not just moving past the coronavirus. I'm an avid football fan. I love football. I'm a huge fan of football. I live in Austin, that is home to the University of Texas Longhorns. And they actually held their first in-person game, I believe it was last weekend. And it's been causing a lot of controversy in town because the Longhorns were going to announced that there are going to be 25,000 people in the stands. And that's right now I think in Austin they're limiting gatherings to over 100. So 25,000 seems a little not good. But when kickoff came, the game actually happened. The University of Texas only had about 15,000 fans in the stands. And I love football as much as the next guy, but I'm not putting my life at risk. And ESPN has actually looked at this. They've done polls, and they found that around 70 to 78% of fans said, I'm not good for going back into games until there's a vaccine or something like that. And so people are taking the coronavirus still pretty seriously. And so for Trump to win, he has to convince them that the coronavirus, that he did a great job there. And that seems like a very far leap, right? You know, Trump needs to change the perceptions of him, and that's not going to happen overnight. Oop. Had my dog running around. Come here, little buddy. Anyway, my wife's trying to get the dog. Actually, can you hand him to me? I'm all done with everything I really need to do now, so it's all whatever. No, just saying goodbye. No. Anyway, yeah, so that's the little live show. Only the second time doing it live. It's still a lot of kinks to work out, but this has been fun. I might check back in on Wednesday. Thinking about doing a live thing for the debate on Tuesday, but I'm trying to figure out whether or not I get sued for doing that. But either way, it's been cool. Thanks for hanging out, y'all. Oh, yeah. This damn dog. Run around. Say, hey, buddy. Say hi to the internet. Hi to the internet. Oh, okay. They're over here, dog. All right. Y'all take it easy.